Hello and welcome to the CNBC-TV18 CII Budget Town Hall. I'm Shereen Bhan and it is our absolute privilege to be here as part of the CII's National Council meeting. If you just see the scenario behind me, and we've got plenty of cameras here focusing on what is going on. You've got a packed house here, CEOs representing different sectors, different industries here to give us a sense of where things stand as far as the economy is concerned, but more importantly, what they believe the budget will deliver on, what the expectations are from a historic budget, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the 7th budget that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presents, and this will be the first for any finance minister, 7 consecutive budgets of history in the making. Will the budget live up to that expectation or not? As the interim budget showed, and it was a very short 56-minute speech that the Finance Minister delivered, the government intends to continue on the path that has already been set out over the last 2 terms. The question now is, will there be any change in track? Will there be a difference in the government's approach as far as priorities are concerned? Well, it's also interesting and important to note that the government goes into this budget with a very comfortable fiscal position. In fact, the CNBC-TV18 analysis shows that approximately 1 lakh crore rupee cushion, if not higher, is available to the government since the interim budget was presented, on account of the fact that you've got a 2.1 lakh crore rupee dividend bonanza that's coming from the Reserve Bank of India, and you've also seen a significant increase as far as tax collections are concerned, 30,000 crore rupees higher than what was the number as far as the interim budget is concerned. But without further ado, let me go across to Sanjeev Puri, the president of CII. Mr. Puri, before we talk about the budget, let's talk about the mood here at CII. As I pointed out, you've got different sectors being represented here. What is the mood as we go into this budget? How buoyant, how optimistic, how confident is corporate India feeling about demand, about growth?
So I think the mood is quite positive, it's optimistic, and that's reflected also in the CEO's internal surveys that we do on business confidence. It's in fact significantly higher than what it was the same period last year. So the outlook on growth, on investments and jobs is certainly positive. And it's also, you know, the performance of the economy last year and high frequency indicators are also reflective of this trend. And of course, as you know, that nation building or economic development is always a journey. So there are lots of positives today. And the model of growth of inclusive growth, which is investment-led, empowerment-led, has, I think, certainly been validated. And I think that journey should continue, because economic development is always a journey. And of course, there are additional areas that would need to be addressed as we go forward. You know, overall, very optimistic, I would say.
Very optimistic is the mood at this point in time, but specifically as far as consumption is concerned, and I'll link this to the rural economy as well, Mr. Puri. What's the sense that you get on consumption? I mean, FMCG volume growth, for instance, has not kept pace with the kind of GDP, headline GDP number that we've seen. And that has raised questions on why we're seeing this divergence or dissonance. How do you read that?
No. That is true. As I said, you know, there are still areas to be addressed. And we have to also, when we come to consumption, I think it's also important to step back and look at it from a global perspective. Consequent to COVID, we have seen the cost table, and a lot of it, because of external factors, has actually gone up. And because of that, there is a challenge on consumption across the world. In many economies, including proximal economies, you will find that it has shrunk and not even come back to pre-COVID levels. In India, well, we are comparatively better off. We are not what we would like it to be, but we are better off. And we are now questioning the rate of growth. The rate of growth is muted. That's the question in our minds. And you're right, that is the reality. So what are the ways to attend to this? I think, first of all, as far as rural is concerned, given that cost of everything has gone up, what CII is recommending is that the amounts through direct benefit transfer, the amounts through Manrega, and income tax at the lower end, below 20 lakhs, there should be some relief in, and all the other areas should be increased. As far as infra spends are concerned, we are also talking about, you know, also putting greater indexation to spends in the rural area. Then, of course, to solve the rural angle on a more sustainable basis, the issues of both agriculture and empowerment of rural economy through skilling, etc. Which skilling, of course, is a joint responsibility that industry also has a role to play there. I think that has to be addressed. And as far as agriculture is concerned, I think a lot of policies of collectives, technologies, clusters, they're all the right tools. We have to scale this up and very aggressively start working on building resilience, because the biggest culprit at this moment in the recent past on rural incomes has been the weather events, which are of course favorable now. So hopefully it should get much better going forward.
And we're hoping that the monsoon deficit will be bridged. But before I get Sanjeev Bajaj into the conversation, a quick headline number from you. What if you expect that volume growth will pick up? What could the industry-wide, FMCG industry-wide volume growth, average volume growth be in the second half of the year?
No, that's difficult. That's difficult to answer.
That's why I said industry, not pinning you down to ITC.
No, even for the industry to put a number is very difficult. But we do expect that with the monsoons being better and the cumulative impact of all the investments that are already happening in the economy. See, private investment is also happening, jobs are getting created, public capex is happening, though during the the election period there's been a little lull, but it's picking up again. So all of this cumulative impact will boost consumption. It will definitely go up, but very difficult to forecast.
A number. Sanjeev, let me come to you now as far as growth and demand is concerned. The regulator, the RBI, certainly seems to be concerned about unsecured loans and unsecured lending, and we've seen several measures coming in from the regulator on the back of that. How are you seeing the landscape at this point in time, both in terms of what's happening with credit offtake, and perhaps do you believe that the industry is prepared for more regulatory action?
So the first point is, when you look at non-food bank credit, we are about 16-17%. So that is gradually growing, and that's a positive. Where it comes to small value unsecured loans, we saw a significant growth in this in the last couple of years. And I believe that the RBI has taken the right steps in trying to control that. I believe that associated with it, we've also seen in the F&O market significant increase in small value transactions in the last couple of years, which means part of this money could be used for speculative purposes, and that does not help anybody in the short to medium term. So some of these checks and controls are required, but at the same time, the regulators, we know, have an equal role to support growth as well. Let's hope for a good monsoon. We are starting to see better growth in rural India, at least in our businesses, compared to the last 4 or 5 quarters. The last quarter has been better. But yes, we need to get this cycle of growth, of private capex, of demand and jobs to move to the next level of acceleration.
Any concerns around, what we are seeing, for instance, as far as MFIs are concerned, concerns building around NPAs, around delinquencies, any concerns that NBFCs at this point in time are seeing? Any signs?
At an MFI level, well, our own presence is negligible there, but I don't see or hear of a sector level issue. If it's an individual company issue, it could be.
Okay, so your big expectation from the budget, I know there's a long wish list that's been sent in to the finance minister, but if I were to ask you to taper that down to the top 3, what would those be?
The first, very clearly as India, we are in a position where we have a significant chance over the next 5-10 years to partake in a larger part of the global economy. Our last 5 years have seen the early benefits of schemes like the PLI scheme. There have been some mistakes along the way also which need to be corrected. I hope we see a version 2 of that, and while we know the budget is for the year, but I hope there's a direction for the next 5 years. What industry needs is a clear glide path of what to expect over, say, the next 5, even 10 years, so that they can invest with confidence. Second, around jobs, getting jobs and skilling. We were just talking to somebody over lunch, and you can't get people because most people have gone home, and how do you get them back? I think this is another big challenge for industry. Third is around skilling, and I know the government is doing a lot as private sector.
Gone home, meaning gone home for what reason? On account of the elections, or?
Gone home for elections, gone home because...
Or do they not feel, there is enough opportunity back home and hence they don't feel the need to be here?
So, post-COVID, what has happened is partly the additional amount of money that came into their hands when they needed it at that time, going back and living in those means We believe that a lot of people have just got used to that, and bringing them back into the city is taking a disproportionate effort. But that needs to be done. How can the government support industry for doing that? We also know that very often for industry there's a gap in skilling between what you learn out of college and what's required at work. Now, each of these are areas where work has been done.
Right.
Question is, how do you turbocharge this to the next level?
Okay, so that's interesting. So you're saying schemes like the free food scheme, etc., are now providing enough of a cushion that people are considering staying back in villages as opposed to coming to cities looking for a job. That's an interesting point that you make, Sanjeev Bajaj. But let me get Mr. Mukundan into the conversation as well, because Sanjeev also alluded to the PLI schemes, and we have 13 PLI schemes in operation. As part of the 100-day agenda, we're given to understand that from a manufacturing perspective, the government could perhaps be looking at even additional schemes, new schemes, not PLI, but things like medical device manufacturing, etc. What would industry be hoping for that this budget takes forward?
So, Shereen, I think rather than get into PLI straight away, let me go to the broader issue which you raised. I think I've traveled to almost 15 cities in the last 1 month, part of CII, met the members. There are 4 issues which comes again and again whenever you go. One is the jobs issue, second is the skill issue, which I think Sanjeev alluded to. And then there's an issue which MSME is raising in terms of, that demand and how do we sort of support them. And while that support is there, I think we need to look at the broader environment and say, how do we link it to our trade policy? How do we enable them to serve the world market? I think that 4 key pivots have to be done. Don't just rely on Indian market demand growth, but rely on our connectivity to the world, become part of the global supply chain. And in that, PLI has a big role.
Right.
I think we got to link it to those sectors which are going to be very, very strategic in becoming part of the global supply chain. Put your money there and then enable the MSME to become part of the value chain. It creates jobs. But of course, the skill issue, the government has done a lot in my view. If you look at the new NCVT guidelines, the credit guidelines which have come out, but they have just come out about a month or 2 before. We need to still operationalize them. So a lot more focus in making them operational. And then getting a focus back on the general good, which is basically to say, don't cut back on your public investment.
Right.
And hold on one issue, which I think maybe will serve as at least for the next 2-3 years, this 15% income tax sunset clause.
Yeah.
If you can push it back by another couple of years, or maybe give it a 5-year push, I think it's going to play extremely well. The external environment is positive today. If you look at the environment in terms of interest rate, they're going to fall. You go look at despite all the trouble in the world, energy costs are almost flat. You can't ask for a better environment, but we now need to capitalize and move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talked about that extension as far as the 15% corporate tax rate is concerned for new manufacturing facilities. And of course, this has been part of the wish list that's been sent in. But I do want to address the issue of jobs, because we heard there from Mr. Puri, we heard from Sanjeev Bajaj, and you said it as well, that industry is feeling confident, industry is buoyant, private investment is picking up, capacity utilization, if I take a look at different sectors, is now 80-85%. So where are we going to start to see the jobs coming in from? Are we now on the cusp of significant additional capacity being set up, or is it continued to be across different sectors in different ways, Mr. Mukundan?
See, the jobs is a general issue you hear anyway when you meet people in the community. But when you meet the industry, they talk about skilled workforce. There's a shortage. So what we are saying is there's a mismatch. We need to bridge the mismatch. And the only way we're going to do that is focusing even more on skill building, that the people who need jobs can get the right skills to come and work productively. I think that's the thing we need to solve for. The framework exists, but how do companies take this up more vigorously, as Sanjeev said, is one of the key issues.